The first item of which is the minutes of our February 8th, 2021 meeting.
This is Susan. I move approval.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
This is Robert. I would second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion about the minutes? Hearing none. Those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. Our next order of business is a public hearing on the Mayflower Drive, Hubbard Avenue Reconstruction project. And I guess it's appropriate for me to call that public hearing to order. Sean, can you tell how many people there are here that are viewing this? Or?
I have a participant list with a total of 25 participants, but I know that at least one is using both an internet connection and a phone connection. So
Okay.
it might be 24 people, including committee members.
All right. Well, then the hearing's in order, and I'll welcome everyone to this committee meeting. I would tell people that this is not our preferred format for conducting a public hearing. We'd much rather be in the council chambers at City Hall where everybody can be in the same room at the same time and listen to the presentations and the questions and the answers. But that's not possible, obviously, these days. So we hope that everyone present will bear with us a little bit, and we'll do the best that we can to conduct an orderly hearing here under this rather strained format. I want to remind everyone that the purpose of this public hearing, the subject of it, is the proposed assessments for the assessment resolution and the letters that you all received related to the street improvement project. This committee already approved the design elements of this project back in December, and there will be no further action taken relative to design elements this evening. Bids were requested based on the committee's recommendation in December. Bids have been received, and after the public hearing is over, we will be looking at those bids and making a bid award this evening. I would note also, when the city sent out the request for bids, the city asked that bidders treat the portion of the project involving Mayflower Drive, or Mayflower Avenue, I guess it is. Mayflower Drive,
Yep, that's
south of Maywood, as an alternate, which means that it could be separated from the rest of the project. The bid recommendation prepared by city staff, all the bids that we received were based on that alternate, and the bid recommendation prepared by city staff does not include doing the work on Mayflower Avenue south of Maywood, or north of Maywood, I'm sorry, in 2021. I would repeat that. The bid recommendation prepared by the staff does not include doing the Mayflower Avenue portion south of Maywood in 2021.
North of Maywood.
Pardon?
North of Maywood.
North of Maywood. I'm mixed up on my streets and my directions, I guess. I would also note, as an aside, that the 5-year street improvement plan that this committee adopted a couple of weeks ago and forwarded to the Planning Commission and to the Common Council includes doing some work on Columbus Drive and the 3 courts that intersect Columbus Drive in 2024. It is probably likely that the Mayflower Avenue portion of this project north of Maywood Boulevard would get done in conjunction with that work, since they are directly contiguous streets. But in any event, the bid that we will be dealing with tonight does not deal with Mayflower Avenue north of Maywood. With that, by way of a bit of background, I'm going to ask City Engineer Sean Stowski if he would explain some of the mechanics of how people are going to participate in this hearing this evening. And then after that, we're going to hear from engineering technician Rich Wyatt, who will provide us an overview of the project. And following that presentation, we'll be prepared to receive public comment and questions. So Sean, would you like to tell us how we go about doing this?
Sure, just a couple of nuts and bolts kinds of housekeeping issues to start with here. As you've entered into the meeting, the screen, if you're seeing your photograph, has a name associated with it. Now, some devices either use just a first name or sometimes an iPhone, name, but it's not the kind of name that helps us identify you as a person. So if you could take a minute while we're preparing here to just in the participants box, and that's probably found on the lower portion of your screen as sort of a green square or rectangle. Click on that participants box. And when you find your name, one of the options for you will be to change your name or revise your name so that you can edit it into your actual first name and last name. And that'll help us with record keeping. Now, if you're just listening in and not at all interested in speaking and or don't want to show up in the minutes as being present, there's no need to do that. But otherwise, I'll need to slow the meeting down if you do wish to speak, to ask you for your full name so that I can edit your box. So that's really helpful for us just in time management. Secondly, while we're present in the council chambers, it's easy enough for the chair to recognize literal raised hands, but here in the virtual world, we're stuck with recognizing virtually raised hands because not everybody can see all of the participants at the same time. And so there's an option in Zoom called raise hand, and it results on my screen in the participants window of a little blue icon that looks like a don't walk symbol of just an upraised hand, so that I'll know that you've raised your hand and wish to speak. The downside is, depending on what sort of device you're using to connect, you access it in slightly different ways. So if you're running an old version of Zoom someplace in that participant box, which again is on the lower menu bar as a green rectangle, if you click on that, one of the options down at the bottom of that participants screen, sometimes under the ... which means more in computer language, I guess, will be to raise hand. The newer versions of Zoom, if you're running on an updated version, moved that feature inconveniently enough to something called reactions instead of participants, in which case, if you don't find it under participants, go look under a separate window at that bottom menu, way off on the right-hand side, it'll say reactions. And in there, then near the bottom, should be a little blue raise hand feature. If you're calling in on a phone for your audio, you're not using a computer sort of connection, just using a phone, you'd have to enter the code *9 or *9 to be able to designate yourself as raising your hand. And that, of course, then also toggles it so you can lower your hand when you're no longer interested in speaking. And I think on iPhones and Android tablet devices, it's not under participants or reactions, it's just off to the lower right under that ... ellipses sort of symbol, just in a submenu called more. And that should open up a separate pop-out, one of the choices, which is raise hand. So again, on my screen, then that shows up. It floats you to the top of the list in the order in which you raised your hand, so that I can call on you and have the chair give you some time. So that's the nuts and bolts of putting in your name and raising your hand. And oh, and I see one of our participants has already raised his hand, so that's good. That's working in at least one case now. I feel good about that. So wait until called upon. It's somewhat helpful if most people can mute themselves until they're called upon, just so we can avoid background noise or clutter that might be distracting to somebody. And with that, I think I'll introduce Rich. Oh, Bob, have we decided, will we be running a timer when participants are speaking or not?
Well, I think, Sean, it depends on how many people we have that wish to speak. I mean, if all 25 people who were here wish to speak, I think then we're going to have to put some time limit on how long people speak. But if they're only a small number, I don't think we have to worry too much about that. Although I think we should put at least a 5-minute time limit on individual presentations. And depending on how many people want to speak, it may have to be shorter than that.
Well, I would suggest that in the interest of fairness, if we're going to set a limit, we should set it right off the bat so we don't feel our way through it. And I won't know before we begin how many people are interested in speaking unless everybody interested in speaking raises their hand right now. The other way we could do this would be to begin with a time limit, but then to circle back and allow more comments and time if you feel like we have plenty of time to entertain more comments.
That's fine. Why don't we set then a 3-minute time limit? And if we need to go back and give people another opportunity, depending on how long things go, we can do that as well.
Okay, that seems good. So with that, I'll get my timer set up here. And in the meantime, Rich Weihert, who's our project manager for this, can provide an overview of the public hearing, the assessment process, our policy, and the project itself.
Right, and Sean, just so we understand here, the timing, you're going to keep track of the time?
I'll put that up on the screen, actually, so everybody can see it.
All right, very good. Thank you.
At least if life's working well, I can. So I'll mute myself, and Rich, you can start in.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. This project is Hubbard Avenue, Orchid Lane, Violet, Mayflower Drive, north and south of University Avenue. We expect the construction to be between April and September. It's quite a large project in length and in time. We're hoping to be completed within 156 days after starting. Hours of operation will be between 7:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Heavy equipment can be started and warmed and greased as early as 7 a.m. So you might hear some guys out doing some work and warming vehicles, especially in the cooler days. That's legit, but they shouldn't be tracking or creating any construction at that time. Contractor will maintain traffic control during construction, and you should be able to get to your house most parts of most days. There will be days when you can't, because we will be replacing water main, and that excavation is fairly deep, so there's a lot of spoils in the way. But they will try to maintain good or usable traffic. If you can avoid going through there during the day, that's always helpful, and be careful as you do go through there. Contractor will be posting temporary no parking restrictions as needed. Provide gravel ramps to allow use of your driveway and streets. You may want to relocate your vehicles to a side street before 7:30 a.m. Parking available on side streets unless posted otherwise. Garbage will be continue to be collected on your regular trash day. So Tuesday for Hubbard, Orchid, Violet, and Mayflower south of University, and Wednesday north of University Avenue. Place garbage on the roadside at 6 a.m. for early collection. We will be contacting the collection service to try to reschedule the routes so that they aren't in conflict with the construction. Appliance collection and brush collection will be suspended during this construction period. The construction sequence, contractor will set the sequence. The following is likely but not contractual sequence. They're going to do the sewer and water main repairs and replacements, remove and replace sidewalks, curb and gutters, driveway aprons. When they do that, you will not have access for 5 days so that the concrete can cure. They're going to adjust or replace the manhole castings, remove the remaining asphalt, spot repair the subgrade that may be soft and lead to future potholes, pave the street. You need to stay off the street for about 4 hours to allow cooling without marking. So if you're to back out onto the street, don't steer your wheels while stopped. That creates a little tear in the surface of the pavement. We plan on partial depth paving in segments so that we can control some of the dust and gravel mess that happens during construction. So there will be several phases to this where they come back and pave just a portion of it. You will see the binder course going down first. They're going to restore the grass and clean up the project area. The assessment schedule, driveway apron replacement, the criteria previously mailed, 50% assessment cost if currently asphalt or concrete, 0 if newer than 2 years. Reconstructed if trip hazard, drainage, impedance, or incidental street work. Some of the aprons that will be removed are removed due to water service connection points. So when they reconnect to those points, they have to remove your concrete. They could have to remove your concrete. If that is the case, that is paid for by the utility, not as a deficiency of your apron. Credit of 25% of assessment quantities for corner lots if improvements to your side yard frontage. Engineering administration charge of 15% of subtotal of above costs. The total shown on the assessment schedule is the most you will have to pay. Costs are based on bid prices. Assessable costs are about $47,000 of the $2,140,551 project cost, or about 2.1%. All other costs, manhole, curb, asphalt, are from general taxes. Costs will be billed after the project is completed. Bill may be paid in total within 30 days of billing. Bill may be paid in 3 annual installments with a minimum payment of $250. Bill Burns, the financial director, can answer any specific questions regarding interest. Sidewalk repairs. Outside of utility connections and handicap ramps are part of a different annual maintenance project. We did not address the bulk of the sidewalk areas. That would normally be a separate concrete replacement project handled by a different technician. Tree removals. There are no planned trees to be removed with this project. There will be some pruning to clearance for excavators and dump trucks. We don't want to cause damage to trees, so we try to trim them up so that the excavator or dump trucks don't rub on them. Specific tree questions should be directed to me for referral to the city forester. Extra work. If you would like some additional work to a sidewalk pursued by the city, will be paid by the city. This will create a field agreement, and you will have to agree to have that added to the additional to your assessment, or just have a field agreement because you don't already have an assessed amount, a special assessed amount. We can meet in the field to discuss the limits of the extra work requested. We will both sign the field agreement, which describes the extra work requested and states that the owner agrees to pay the extra cost. This can be done at any time prior to the contractor starting that item of work. If you want additional work done beyond the back of the sidewalk, outside of the right of way, you need to contact your own contractor for the work. The project contractor may be willing to take on additional work, but has no contractual obligation to do so. Prices quoted to you for any additional work may differ from the project prices. Please contact me with any questions at rweihert@ci.middleton.wi.us or 608-821-8383. Are there any questions on any of that?
I have one quick question first here, Rich. With what you've just gone over, do you have that posted on the project webpage already, or will you soon?
I will.
For those of us who didn't take great notes, that we can just see what notes you were reading from.
I'll request that tomorrow.
Okay. That'll be helpful. And do you want to just review quickly where people can find that project webpage?
Sure. It's on the City of Middleton website. I don't have that up right yet, but I can do that. It's going to be under departments. Public Works. Projects. Current construction projects.
Great. Okay, that's helpful. I'm going to, I hope I'm going to bring up my timer. Doesn't it show up in people's screens?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm seeing a timer, Sean.
It's there. Okay.
Very subtle.
I'm actually okay with sarcasm. I get that. Okay, so we have two people so far who have raised their hands and wish to speak that I see. And I know we also got some written comments. I know Katie Nelson, the alder for the district, told me that she got a couple of notes from people. And I also got a note from a person who wasn't sure whether or not he could make it tonight. So if we don't see or hear from him, otherwise I'll read his note as well. But to begin, our first up is Todd Berry. So if you want to, well, you are unmuted, so great.
Okay. And you can see my video, I presume. Okay, great. My name is Todd Berry. I live at 6634 Columbus Drive. I have lived here for almost 30 years. And I also lived in Middleton when I was much younger, before my parents moved into Madison. This is my third time in memory the city has floated the idea of sidewalks. And each time in the past, neighborhood representatives quietly met with city staff, reminded them that we never had sidewalks, that we purchased homes in Saks Woods because we liked the natural character of the neighborhood without walks. And city staff always heeded neighborhood wishes, and this issue would die for another 10 to 15 years. This seems to be different. Neighbors get the feeling that our opposition is being ignored and that the plans are just proceeding as, at a fairly rapid pace. Let me be clear that we don't see there is any compelling reason to add walks to Mayflower or Columbus now or ever, which is why I asked the committee to do more than temporarily defer Mayflower walks and direct city staff to remove Mayflower and Columbus from any future sidewalk road narrowing plans or project lists. Don't ignore a large neighborhood majority and make us renew our strong opposition year after year. Just to reiterate some of the arguments, a majority of the owners here have lived here over 20 years, and we are virtually unanimous in opposing walks. We like our trees, our gardens, our lack of concrete walks. One argument that is raised is that we need access to Parisi Park, but we have 4 paved access points to Parisi Park. And in fact, one of them is just around the corner from where you want to build sidewalks down Maywood a little bit. One thing that I think is being misstated, and Ann Fisher can speak to this more intelligently than I can, but the city forester has confirmed that some trees and gardens will be destroyed on Maywood. So that this statement that that's not true is not correct. Affected owners, a majority of whom are beyond or near retirement age, will be asked to pay special assessments and bear responsibility for snow shoveling and lawn maintenance, costs that they never knew and never anticipated 20, 40, and even 60 years ago. And if traffic is an issue, and we don't think it is, speed bumps are the answer. They're more resident responsive, they're more effective, they're less expensive, and the city has already proved that because the walks on Maywood have been there a long time. And what did the city do? They just added speed bumps. So again, the city has precedent for not building walks when it's been given the choice, and it's done so in this neighborhood. And I'd ask you to just stop this, stop the Mayflower Columbus project now and for good.
All right, thank you.
The next person with their hand up is Alder Katie Nelson.
Thank you, Sean. I have 2 messages, so I'll try and be quick with each one. This one is from Cheryl Randall. I'm Cheryl Randall and live with my husband Doug on Nina Court at the junction of Mayflower Drive and Columbus Drive. We are original homeowners in the 4th addition to Sachs Woods, where the sidewalks are being proposed. I wish to share a historical perspective of this part of Sachs Woods with the City of Middleton Common Council. In the 40s, when I was a Girl Scout living in Shorewood Hills, our troop would take an adventurous hike to the Sacristan property behind the Sachs restaurant at the bend of University Avenue, near where Walgreens is now located. We walked through the field, past Savannah oak trees, and into the shaded deciduous woods belonging to the Sacristans. We climbed down a ravine where the sewer line now goes to Pheasant Branch Creek. This is approximately the same route as the present Mayflower and Columbus Drive strip that is being proposed for sidewalks. Some of the Savannah trees are still on Mayflower Drive. The ravine at Nina Court was filled when the sewer line was put there. Nature has tried to return it to being a ravine after 2 major flood events. Our Girl Scout troop would sit down for a picnic lunch next to the Pheasant Branch Creek and then go exploring in the valley. It was a magical place with a babbling brook. We called it Explorer's Paradise. Skip ahead to the early 60s when Doug and I were on our way to vote at the Middleton Village Hall. Middleton was still a village. We drove along Branch Street and saw lots for sale in the 4th addition to Sachs Woods, next to that very special Pheasant Branch Creek. I still feel the excitement of that day. We immediately contacted the realtor and soon had a down payment on our precious lot overlooking Pheasant Branch Creek Valley. Ever since I've worked to preserve the natural beauty and unique features of our wooded lot and the Pheasant Branch Conservancy. In 1965, we and 3 other couples living adjacent to both north and south sides of Pheasant Branch Creek corridor formed a citizens group. Our mission was to preserve and protect the Pheasant Branch Creek Valley. Our group expanded to many Middleton citizens and carried on a variety of projects. To name a few, I'm going to run out of time. So in conclusion, because this is a quite...
And I'll be happy to share this with the committee later since it's in writing.
That would be great. Doug and I urge you to reject this sidewalk proposal for Mayflower Drive and in the future for Columbus Drive in order to preserve the natural features and ambiance of the unique Sachs Woods area in the city of Middleton. Respectfully, Doug and Cheryl Randall, 2505 Nina Court.
Okay.
And then just come back to me for the other one.
Well, I know you have another one, and feel free to read that. That's a separate citizen.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. This one is from Mary Haughty, 6718 Franklin Avenue. And she wrote, I would like to support the effort to add a sidewalk in the street, narrowing the width of Mayflower between Maywood and the entrance to Parisi Park, and possibly in the future, all the way down Columbus to Branch Street. In doing this, you must reassure the residents that will be affected that the mature trees along the road will not be harmed. I witnessed myself that Sidewalk Repair on Bristol Street near the high school damaged a beautiful mature tree so badly that it had to be removed, and that stormwater runoff will be handled as well, if not better, with a sidewalk and less pavement. I'm nearly 70 years old and have lived in Sachs Woods for 18 years. I'm supporting this sidewalk because I walk this area several times a week, especially in the summer. I love this walk as both an entrance to Parisi Park and to walk up the Columbus Hill and down Branch Street to enter the Pheasant Branch Conservancy. I walk so that I'm facing traffic and hug the curb for safety. Even with that precaution, I am relieved every time I am able to step out of the street and back onto the sidewalk where I feel safe from cars. In winter, with cars parked along the street and snow pushed to the curb, I simply do not feel safe walking in this street when cars use Columbus and Mayflower as a cutoff between Branch and Maywood or University Avenue. I understand and empathize with neighbors who would like to not pay for this improvement, are worried about their trees, and simply do not feel that is needed. My thought is that maybe it wasn't needed 30 or 40 years ago, but with the current traffic and electric cars that you cannot hear coming, I feel it is time to put walkers' safety first. I cannot attend the meeting tonight as I have a conflict, and she asked me to read it into the record. Thank you for listening, Mary Haughty.
All right, thank you, Katie.
lower your hand again. Next up, we had Lindsay Whitlock. If you want to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hello.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I agree so much with the letter that was just read. I also have just a lot of respect for the people who've been here a long time before me. I've just moved into the neighborhood 3 years ago, but I plan on living here a long time. I have 3 school-age children, and I speak a lot with other young families, a lot of whom walk this small stretch to the park on a pretty regular basis. And it really is very difficult for a lot of them, especially with toddlers and other very young children, to walk this stretch of street. I think that this sidewalk is really, in the grand scheme of things, a small project that would have a really big influence on, it'd be a big improvement for many of us, including myself and my children. I think that I empathize so much with people who, I agree with people who want to preserve the character of this area. But I think that replacing street pavement with sidewalk would only be a benefit to those of us who love to walk these streets. And I think it was a mistake to build them without sidewalks, to make walking safe and welcoming for everyone. Yeah, I just think it's a great investment and I support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, we had Audrey Damon Wynn.
Hi, I'm not sure I'm in the right part of the agenda because I don't have any comment on the sidewalk issue. My question is more about my individual assessment. We received an assessment to replace our driveway apron. which we moved here. I live at 6715 Hubbard Avenue. We bought the house in 2015 and we replaced our entire driveway and the apron in August of 2016. So I'm just curious about why they would replace new concrete and how they came to that conclusion.
Sure. And let me pause here for a sec. Often when we're replacing curb and gutter, which has nothing to do with your driveway apron per se, what we have difficulty doing is trying to save the driveway apron. So even if it's in good condition, what happens is as we're removing curb and gutter that's bad, gravel spills out from underneath the concrete slab of the apron. And we've tried saving some of these in the past, but we've had very limited success with that because it creates this air void underneath the driveway apron then that we just can't get stuff back into at a reasonable density. And so years later, it starts to crack and turn into smaller sections that then settle. And it just creates headache and heartache later. So that's why we replace them now. And that's part of why the policy was set up to assess those at 50% of their costs instead of 100% of their costs, because we recognize it's an interface really between the street work itself and the property access.
Okay, I don't know that I followed all that, but from my perspective, I paid, and I have the itemized bill from the concrete work. We paid $1,000 less than 5 years ago to replace that, and I'm being assessed for $700 for it to be replaced again.
Right, our policy is that if it's newer than 2 years, that we don't assess for it, but that has been the cutoff in policy. Somebody has to draw a line, and that's the one the city drew.
So back to what you were explaining before, is it a done deal that it will have to be replaced? Are you saying? I mean, I guess I lost you in all the explanation of why it has to be replaced.
Sure. I don't know the particulars of it, and Rich Weihert, our project manager, would absolutely be willing, happy in fact, to look into this with you, your specific apron,
Okay.
and with a set of drawings, explain why it has to be replaced.
Okay.
And that'd be in greater detail than we're likely going to get into tonight.
Okay,
But
so I should email him?
I would suggest that's the best way to set up a meeting, and either virtually or out in the field, whichever works best for the both of you.
Okay.
And he'll be able to explain if it's in great shape and there's a way to save it. We would prefer to do that.
Yeah, I would too.
Often that doesn't work.
It's in excellent shape.
Yeah, and I understand you're not the only one to which this has happened. It just, when we've tried saving these in the past, years later, when it starts cracking and falling apart, it just causes frustration.
Okay, well, I will email Rich then.
Okay.
To follow up. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
no,
Audrey.
thank you. And then next up is Kate. Is it Callan or Kalin? Kate.
Hi.
Hi.
Kate Kalin. I live on Pinta Court, and I'm a little busy these days. If you can tell, I've got a 12-day-old newborn here named Gloria. But I just wanted, thank you. And thanks for having us to speak. I really appreciate it. But I'm here to advocate for the sidewalks. I have 2 small children now, a newborn and then a 1.5-year-old. And the idea of not having sidewalks with the curves and the steep hill off of Columbus, with 2 small young children, it just feels really unsafe, especially in the winter where we don't have the roads get packed with snow and ice and it feels really unsafe to be walking with a stroller. And toddlers and small children don't really understand the boundary between the road and sidewalks, or between if it's just like a painted line or even a speed bump. Whereas if there were sidewalks, I feel like that boundary would be, better understood by smaller children. So I just wanted to say I'm hopeful that this is something that gets approved. I think with the growth of the city, the traffic, distracted driving, it's really important for not just children in the neighborhood, but also people who are differently abled. And also as a driver, I can't think of how many times I've driven around in the dark in the neighborhood and come around the corner and there's somebody kind of close to the center of the road, walking their dogs and not wearing reflective clothing, which, it's going to happen sometimes, but it feels very unsafe and startles me. And I don't think anybody here wants someone to get hurt. And we certainly don't want to be the driver that would accidentally hurt someone either. So I understand the need to protect the trees. Of course, we all agree with that. We wouldn't live in this neighborhood if we didn't believe that. I understand the concerns about cost, but ultimately I think safety is the priority. And I just wanted to come here to say that.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mike Speedwick, if I'm not butchering that too badly.
It's fine. Hello, I live at 2411 Mayflower Drive, and I don't feel the sidewalks are needed. I'm disappointed that it sounds like the design has already been set way back in December, and I didn't even find out about this project until, halfway through January or something. So I would think that you should have polled the neighborhood or something like that, get more input early on and having this set. And I'm guessing from what you guys said is that this is pushed off now to 2024, or that's just a consideration. I'm also concerned with the assessment. I've got an estimate so far, and I heard one guy say that it won't go over that. But does that include the section on Columbus too? And do you plan on assessing people in the courts for the sidewalk project also? I mean, I think it would only be fair if you do wind up going ahead with this. We're hearing from some people, no trees, and other people like the city arborist said, there's trees definitely gonna come down. So I'm against the project. I've lived here for 7 years. This is a very low traffic street. I would consider an alternative, either turning the street into a dead end or some speed bumps or something like that. That would be a much better solution, in my opinion. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments, Mike.
Next up, we have Susan West. Now, Susan, are you reading a comment from a constituent, or did you want to participate in committee discussion?
Comments from constituents. So why don't you
Okay.
put me at the end? So hopefully I don't have to repeat what people have said.
Sure, I'll skip over you for now and just leave your hand up. So
Okay.
next, and thank you. Next, then we have James Allen. So James, you're up to speak. Let me ask you to unmute. Sometimes that helps. Can you hear us, James? I see that your microphone is unmuted, so we should be able to hear you, but I don't. So there may be a technical issue, I'm not sure. I think I'm going to re-mute you, James, and we'll try again in a bit. Next up is Jared Browning.
Let me see if I can. Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, you're coming
Yeah.
through.
I can't seem to do the to put my video on, but I will speak. So I reside on 2416 Mayflower Drive. I see video coming up here. And I've heard many of the reasons here cited against the proposal, but I think I want to call attention to a few more. I have a total of 6 kind of compelling reasons, and I want to begin with this concept of safety. I think there's little to no justification for improving residents and pedestrian safety with this proposal, as the neighborhood has clearly had a long history, and I've lived here more than 20 years, nearly 20 years, as there's been few, if any at all, incidents to pedestrians that use Mayflower Drive in its current configuration. This includes the raising of my 2 children who grew up here and who with their band of friends walk these streets regularly to not only Parisi Park and the 3 area schools. We have seen nor experienced any issues. And I think, this idea of narrowing the streets, putting in a sidewalk is a solution in search of a problem of which there is none. This, in addition to some of the other points that have already been made, and I consider those part of my 6 compelling reasons, I don't want to underestimate, and nor do I think our neighbors, some of whom are elderly, the additional physical or cost burden, of these directly affected households that would be responsible for the removal of any snow or ice that accumulates on the sidewalks. And certainly for the phase 2 project, I call it phase 2, beyond the current proposal, extending up through the courts and Columbus Drive, there would, without a doubt, be removal of trees and habitat. And we prize our old growth trees, many of which are several hundred years old. We've had to remove a few, but I know that they are old. And that is very much, part of the look, feel, and natural character of the area that has been a hallmark of Saks Wood since its inception. And lastly, I would like to point out, to date, there have been more than 53 households in the near vicinity for these proposed projects, and 13 additional households for a total of 56 in the vicinity and area that have been documented as being against this proposal. Okay, this was based upon the January 11th committee meeting, of which many of us have attended. Within those 66 households, there's more than 100 signatures from residents in the neighborhood that are against this proposal. In contrast, as of that January 11th meeting, and I haven't reconciled that with what's been maybe discussed or presented here since that time, there are only 3 documented instances of residents in the area that support the proposal. So with that in mind, I'm staunchly against this idea of the existing proposal north of Maywood for access to Parisi Park, of which there is ample access, in addition to consideration for additional sidewalk projects up through Mayflower Drive, through our court, which is Nina Court, and on upwards of Columbus Drive.
All right, thank you for your comments.
The next up would be Margaret Lewis.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
You're coming through fine.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to share input from the neighborhood. I'm a former state elected official and know how important it is to listen to constituents when voting on issues of policy. I have also learned that, I guess in time, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I dearly care for the safety of my fellow neighbors and those with young children, raised 3 young children here on Columbus Drive. And it's important for children to learn, to be safe. And this gives them a learning opportunity to, be wise and alert to traffic. And those coming from the other direction along Mayflower, it's only half a block where there isn't sidewalk because people can walk on the other side, and then it's just half a block to Parisi Park. So this is just an amazingly huge expenditure for a very destructive and small project where there has been no, demonstrated need. And so I would surely respectfully ask the council and the mayor to go with what has worked for a very long time and to represent the constituents of Middleton here that have chosen this very special area along the Pheasant Branch Creek. Many of us have been involved with the Friends of Pheasant Branch for many years and want to do our little part in keeping this a very special part of the city. And that doesn't mean every part of the city needs to be exactly the same. And we all do respect our fellow neighbors and hope that there can be found some common ground that can better assure people of safety if they're fearful, and also not create a huge expense and work for those that have chosen to live here because it is a different and unique place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Margaret, for your comments.
Next up, we have Anna Fosdick. Or is it Anna? Oh, you'll need to unmute first, sorry.
Sorry about that. I found the button. So thank you so much for having us. And, as others have noted, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. I do feel like this is an issue that reasonable people can disagree on, really depending a lot upon how much emphasis they put on safety issues versus things like what the cost will be. I also think, there's generational differences. People who have raised their kids here in previous decades might not have the same safety concerns as people whose young children are growing up in this neighborhood now. So certainly I respect, that people have different opinions. I have posted on the Nextdoor site, others have posted. I actually pulled down all of the support, statements from that site last night in preparation for this meeting. And I had a total of 31 pages of supportive statements in favor of sidewalks. So when people say that there's only 3 supporters of the proposal in Sachs Woods, I assure you that's not true. Not everybody is posting on Nextdoor. There have been people who have withdrawn their support for the petition because they have felt like the petition campaign has been highly misleading, particularly with the Save the Trees signage, given that the city's proposal does leave the trees intact, and we've heard that again tonight. I have 4 children. We moved here in 2012. After living in Madison many years. our youngest daughter was attacked by our next door neighbor's Rottweiler, and it left her with life-threatening injuries at the time. And for us, coming here to Sachs Woods, it was just about as opposite a neighborhood as we could possibly have landed in. You know, we really went from, you know, being in a very threatening environment to our children's direct safety, to being somewhere where neighbors care about the neighborhood, and there's many wonderful, wonderful things about living here. I will say, however, that the streets are really a safety issue. And, you know, this has been my concern for a while. I have 4 children. And, you know, for a long time, all 4 of my kids would play with the daughter of our very beloved and recently passed away athletic director, Bob Jowers, who, you know, he would be yelling in his front yard as cars accelerate to speed up the hill by our house. And then they're speeding as they go down the hill. Yeah, probably out of time, huh?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest it.
Yeah, no worries about that. Sorry, I was on a different screen just looking at my notes. So thank you so much, and we appreciate the time to.
All right, thank you for your comments, Anna.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Katie and Paul Rogers.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, can you see us or me?
Yes.
Okay.
Both. It's a twofer.
I guess we just wanted to, we've lived at 6620 Columbus Drive for 15 years now. We raised 1 daughter, 23, she's away now, but we're still raising another son right here now, who's 12 and walks the streets frequently. We are against the sidewalks. One of the reasons we love this neighborhood and moved in was because it didn't have the sidewalks in the first place. We were not expecting there to ever be sidewalks. We've never had any trouble with safety or any worries really whatsoever. The streets are so wide that there's never really been a concern with safety walking them. We just want to echo everyone else, the people who have said everything else that people have said about the trees and alternate plans, alternate safety options. If there is a concern about safety, alternate options to slow down traffic. I just don't think that the sidewalks, that the cost of this project, it just is not worth it to us. It seems that the money can find better uses than putting sidewalks in a place where there haven't been sidewalks from what I'm hearing here, 60 plus years. So I guess that's it. We're both against it and just wanted to put that out.
Thank you for your comments.
Next up, we have James Newton. Oh, you're still muted though, James.
There we go. Okay, a little clumsy on the mouse. Yeah, I live at, my wife and I live at 6648 Columbus Drive. We lived here about 35 years. It's quite near the corner of Columbus and Mayflower where it curves around. I guess our opinion is, safety should be at the top of the list. And just my amateur view of things is that the 2 things that would contribute most to the safety problems would be people using the area as a shortcut to get through, and also speed. I think speed bumps would address that, but I don't think sidewalks would address either of those areas. And the other thing that I've noticed from our windows, we can kind of see the corner of Columbus and Mayflower, and I see pedestrians cutting kitty corner across the that corner all the time, just because that's the shortest route. If you're walking on the north side of Columbus Drive and you want to go to Precy Park, you'll go to the inner radius of that curve. And I would think that would be the biggest place where pedestrian safety would come into play, but sidewalks would not address that at all. So we're against putting sidewalks in. We think speed bumps would be a good solution to improving safety, but that sidewalks would really be a minimal impact. See, I have about a minute and a half left, so I would address one other thing. When I see the look at the hill going up Columbus Drive, a lot of those yards have sloping yards that come down toward the street, and I worry about snow being piled up and then melting and refreezing with those sloping lawns. I would think that might tend to create ice on the sidewalks on a nice sunny day, and that might get like wheelchair drivers going out in the street. I see this happening in other parts of Middleton where I see wheelchair users out on the street. That seems like really dangerous. So I think that should be looked into. Also, maybe someone could put out like a counter classifier for traffic to see exactly what we're looking at here. It seems to be just a lot of informal observations rather than any data on what the traffic situation is really like. So our family is against the sidewalk proposal, and I'll finish up 30 seconds early.
Thank you for your comments, James.
Very good. Next up, we have, oops, I'm sorry. Clicked the wrong hand there. Ann Fisher was next up.
Sean?
Yes.
I have my neighbor James here who would like to go. He was having trouble with his computer, so I'm gonna unmute and then he'll, if you could call on him then. And then I'll go after.
And that's James Allen?
Yes.
Yeah, we were having some trouble there, James. And there's some feedback coming through. So if you have external speakers, if you want to turn those way down before speaking, that would be helpful.
Turn down the speakers.
There you go. That's great.
Am I okay?
Yeah, I'm not getting reverb now, so we're good.
Okay. Thanks for the updated stuff on the information that was specifics that was mailed out to us. I appreciate that sort of stuff. I moved here in '85 and spent years, my fiance at that time, looking for houses in the Madison area. We ended up here, and it was kind of a last minute thing. We had stopped looking, and because we were getting married, and I said, I found this place, let's go look at it. And did some work. It was built by a person in the neighborhood, and we've been very happy here. A lot of talk is about the dangers of the streets here, and lack of sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera. Middleton did a safety study of all of the streets in Middleton, 4-year study, 2014 to 2017. And they specifically looked at pedestrian problems, incidences, pedal bike problems, bicycles, kids on, little trikes and stuff like that. And then also motor vehicles. In our neighborhood, there were 0 incidences of anything for pedestrians, for bicycles, or for motor vehicles. Compare that to the rest of the city, and there is nobody, no neighborhood that is safer than this neighborhood, according to our official 4-year study. Now, we know that was a couple of years ago, it was changed, but I don't think it's changed much. I have felt very, very comfortable walking any place here, and that's a major thing. We talk about specific and facts. Wood Road is about a half a block from our house. It's the same thing, the same suggestions by the city to do sidewalks, et cetera, and violently. so vehemently against that. And their process was withheld. They were redone. The streets are great there, and there aren't sidewalks where they shouldn't have been to begin with. I walk there to Walgreens all the time. I walk. It's safe. Yes, there can be problems, but that's why we teach our kids how to walk safely, what is around, etc., etc. Anything can happen, and sometimes it does. That's just life. But I think what we have is very special, and it's a natural neighborhood. It's a natural entrance into the Greasy Park, etc., etc. And by changing that, it changes. There was one instance I heard of in the background of making this in before making this an example of something to try for Middleton. This works and it's safe, and it always has been. If you use it as an example of trying something different, results will be either the same, it's safe, which it already is, or it may go down the hill. Who the hell knows? Excuse me.
Okay, James, I'm gonna need to move on to our next speaker unless you have a one sentence wrap up.
And we appreciate your comments.
Don't do it. We're safe and we're good.
And since you had your hand up, did you wish to speak too, or was that just for James?
Hi, Sean.
Hi.
You gotta mute.
Oh, we're back to the reverb here.
We're fixing it.
Oh, okay.
Is it on muting now? How are you doing? Oh, no, not yet.
Oh, man.
You're
It's
banned.
very futuristic sounding.
I banned him from the house now. How is that, Sean?
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Now you're
You got it.
muted.
Oh, maybe your speakers
Okay, now
are
I
down.
can't hear you.
Oh, you don't need to hear me. That's okay.
Wait. Are you there, Sean?
Yes.
Now I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're coming through just fine.
I love a little technical difficulty just to get us rolling. Before I have my 2 minutes, I need clarification. And I think some of my neighbors do too. I had written to you and Rich about, we know that there was a alternate bid. We talked about that months ago, actually. Can you reiterate the status of that again?
Sure. In fact, that's something the chairman, Bob Lyons, mentioned just at the beginning of this meeting, but I'll, if you can see on your screen, my little hand waving around a little bit down here. So we opened the bids on the 5th and prepared the assessment schedule on the 8th. And then in analyzing the bids for purposes of staying within the allocated budget, we're recommending as the next agenda item, awarding a construction contract of the base bid only, which would exclude the construction of Mayflower Drive north of Maywood Avenue.
And there's nothing in the bid either that has anything at all at this point to do with Columbus. So there's not much need, I don't think, to have more comment about opposition to sidewalks on Columbus Drive, since there is no proposal before us that deals with that at this point, and there won't be for quite some time, apparently.
Well, I think you know why you're hearing from the residents along Columbus and Mayflower both, so.
Sure, yeah, I just wanted to
Not lost on anyone. Yeah, and I really appreciate that clarification because I know early on in the process, Sean and Richie both were very generous with your time in explaining that that possibility. So I'm glad to hear that there's no likelihood really of that work starting on Mayflower Drive north of Maywood. It sounds like that's unlikely this year.
I would say, yeah, staff is not recommending it.
Correct.
And next, after this agenda item, the committee will weigh in on that.
Right.
And then that recommendation from the committee will go to the Finance Committee and Council. So on the first Tuesday of March, I think it's the 2nd probably, then we'll have a definitive take it to the bank answer.
Gotcha. So I think it makes sense why people are commenting tonight for Columbus and Mayflower, because, you know, we know the roads are connected. So I'm going to go ahead and take my 3 minutes. I really appreciated the comments that several citizens have made about, you know, our committee members represent the constituents. And I think we've heard overwhelmingly constituents are not in favor of this sidewalk and road narrowing. I live at 2312 Mayflower Drive, and I've been here since '92 with my family. We were attracted to this Saks Woods area because of the beautiful trees, because of the large, beautiful homes, and because of the surrounding nature preserve. We live in Saks Woods, a gateway to the Pheasant Branch Conservancy. And as you heard earlier from our neighbors Sherry and Doug Randall, they were early protectors of this area in the 70s, and they still are. I've appreciated their encouragement as I work with neighbors to protect the Saks Woods area. They reminded me that they were not terribly popular at the time they were taking some action to preserve that area. So I'm really heartened by their words of encouragement. Along with over 100 nearby neighbors, we strongly oppose the plan that would negatively alter Saks Woods neighborhood. Our petition that we had was very clear, and it was very simple. We do not want the street narrowed, and we do not want to have sidewalks added. We are very aware that if we walk up the street, that will happen. I want to highlight 9 important points. Saks Woods is an area that needs to be protected. Page 85 of our plan tells us we should protect and enhance the historic character of our community. We want to do that. Stopping this work is an easy place for the Public Works Committee to conserve tax dollars. Every homeowner who is directly opposed on Mayflower Drive opposes this plan. The vast majority of surrounding homeowners oppose this plan, and they feel very safe navigating our street. A sidewalk does exist on the east side of Mayflower Drive, north of Maywood. From Boulder Lane intersection, it is 100 steps without a sidewalk to walk into Parisi Park if you choose to go that way. There are 3 entryways into Parisi Park from sidewalks. From the corner of Maywood Avenue and Mayflower Drive, the first Parisi Park entryway on Maywood is equidistant to the entryway on Mayflower Drive. Other less costly and less invasive and eco-friendly measures should be considered. Mayflower is a quiet local street. We are not an arterial street, nor are we a connector street. Complete streets policy is not a mandate. It's a policy to guide planning, and it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. The policy is meant to encourage deliberate thought process. We interpret this to mean not all wide streets should be narrowed and not all streets should have sidewalks. This was true in the past 2 years for Wood Road, Brookdale Drive, Meadowbrook Road, Forest Glade, and other streets, and they've been conducting safely since. This area along Mayflower Drive was considered a low priority area for a reason in the original sidewalk gap map from the draft comprehensive plan. Finally, inadequate citizen notification for the pedestrian bike transit meeting early in the process of this work, along with the strained citizen engagement due to virtual only meetings, is a signal to our Public Works Committee members who represent Middleton citizens. Pause this work now. Thanks for your attention, and I really do appreciate you serving our community through your committee work.
Thank you for your comments, Ann. And we have your, you sent a letter with most of those comments in them. That's part of the record here also, I think.
Thank you, Bob.
Great. Next up, we have Scott Kalin.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, you're coming through fine.
Okay. So I am I would like us to have sidewalks. I think that it would help make the neighborhood more safe. To me, it just feels like the kind of natural progression to take our neighborhood and Middleton into what the future needs with cars and people texting when they're driving and little kids and whatnot. I hear some people say that it's a good life lesson. I'm learning to walk in a street without sidewalks, but that seems pretty confusing to me. It seems, why would I need to scare my kids to educate them? So I don't quite understand that. But I guess everybody has their own way of doing things. But yeah, I'm here basically to say that I am for the sidewalks. I'm raising a family here, I plan to stay here for a long time. And I think that it's the best situation for everyone to have equal rights because it allows people that might have a difficult time without sidewalks or don't know how to walk in the street safely to still navigate our neighborhoods. So I appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for your comments.
Susan, we're back to you.
Sean, do you have any idea how many more? Is Susan the last one?
We have Susan, Dan Cody raised his hand, Todd Troya just raised his hand, and I have one brief written note from a person who was not able to make it tonight. So 4, I want to say.
Okay.
But go ahead, Susan.
Okay, I'm going to just list some of the people that sent me emails. I think Robert probably also got them because they were sent to council and not Public Works. Michael Speedwick, who I'm fairly certain has spoken.
Yes.
Ann Fisher.
Yes.
Jim and Carol Newton. Cheryl Randall. Marion Greaser. I don't think we heard from her.
No.
All of these are in opposition. Gail Borchers, also in opposition. And then Anna Fosdick, who is in support of sidewalks. So I can forward those on to you to include in our information.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
Dan Cody, you were up next.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I would just like to share a couple of thoughts that I had. And I have a number of comments, but I think I'm only going to touch on the ones that I haven't heard because I just want to save time for everyone. So I want to make the comment that Middleton is a growing city and it has to prepare for the future needs of the community. We have a lot of multifamily housing going up. The need for sidewalks is increasing significantly, especially if you look at a time frame from 30 years ago. All of these individuals can choose to drive or choose to walk, and they base that choice somewhat on the comfort of the path that they're going to take. Anyone that chooses to walk, that's one more instance less of a car on the road. My other comment is that, you know, things are seasonally affected. I think the last time we talked about this, there wasn't a lot of snow on the roads, but personally, I've walked the street, and I'm not comfortable when I'm on a slippery road between a parked car and a car that's coming my way. That is a very uncomfortable position to be in, and you don't necessarily have means to escape from that. So I think that covers what I didn't hear this evening. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
We have Todd Troya.
Thanks for the opportunity. I've moved to Middleton in 1972 and walked Columbus Drive to both of the schools. And now I live on Columbus Drive, and I know Columbus Drive isn't in the plan until 2024. But when I look at what the cost is, I can't cough up that kind of cash, especially if we're going to talk about utility work too. If you narrow the road, then everybody's going to have to move their mailboxes. In fact, you'd probably have to have a walking mailman, because I don't think you can set a post mailbox in whatever lane you plan on putting in. I've never seen any, I've been here for 20 years and have not seen any problems at all with cars, pedestrians. I walk it every day. In fact, I feel safer on Columbus Drive than I do walking in the nature preserve, in fear of getting hit by a bike that's just flying through there when I'm walking my dog. My proposal would be 4 speed bumps, one at the nature preserve section by the Branch Street area, one at each side of the top of the hill, and one down by Parisi Park, with 2 large signs that let you know that if you want to speed, you really shouldn't be speeding through there. There's not that much traffic. The only time I've ever seen traffic is if there is a detour from University Avenue that directs it down through Branch Street. So I am one of the people that signed the petition, and my signature is honest and authentic. So I do oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. And the last person with a hand up is Nicole Schammel.
Hi.
Hello, Nicole.
I am at 6644 Boulder Lane. So we live close to the corner of Boulder and Mayflower. And I am just speaking as somebody who would like the sidewalks. My biggest reason is safety. We have 3 young kids. And I know lots of people have raised kids here, but things have changed just with cars, more distracted driving. I don't know if this is true or not, but I assume that there are more teenage drivers now than maybe there were back when some of these other families were raising young kids. So my biggest concern is safety and having safe access to the park and just along that side of Mayflower. I think somebody else mentioned it. Middleton is growing, and this just seems like a forward-thinking idea for this area. And I believe that we can do it without lots of damage to trees. So I'll just put my note in there about being for the sidewalks. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. And I have then just one more written note that I got today from a person who's unable to join us this evening. So I'll read that into the record as well. It's from Andy Lewis, who wrote, "I'm out of town and will attempt to participate. Regardless of whether or not I attend, please enter these brief comments into the record. Sidewalks are built not for the convenience of the homeowners, but for the community. Most of us pay for the construction and maintenance of these sidewalks. Most of us have the unpleasant task of shoveling these sidewalks. We don't do this because we love a strip of concrete in our front lawn. We do this because we have an obligation to make our community pedestrian friendly and to provide some separation between automobiles and pedestrians. It certainly is not fair that we all maintain sidewalks while others ask for some kind of exemption or special treatment. It sounds like the city staff has worked on a plan that will accommodate some residents' concerns over trees while responding to pedestrian requests to install sidewalks in this section. I believe a narrowing of the street will also create traffic calming benefits. I have heard some local elected officials say they want to keep everybody happy. Unfortunately, that is very often not possible. I would ask the city to simply do the right thing and move forward with the installation of sidewalks in this portion of our community. Making this area more pedestrian friendly will in fact increase the value of these homes. I am sure you have these sources. If not, I can provide them. And to make pedestrian travel safer for walkers and drivers. If the assessment of this cost to the homeowners creates hardships, I would ask the city to not change its assessment policy, but instead allow some deferment spread over a couple of years. There is no need to delay difficult decisions simply because they are difficult.
All right. Sean, thank you for reading that. Does that conclude the number of people who have their hands up?
It does, yes.
All right. Then I think at this point, we will close the public hearing on this subject and move to the next item on our agenda, which is the bid award.
Right, so I don't know if you want me to bring up the bid. It's a fairly busy spreadsheet, but
I remember.
The short version is that with the alternate bid items, as we sort of suspected, it's outside of our budget allocation. So we're recommending award of only the base bid items to Northwestern Stone LLC in the amount of $2,140,551.37.
All right, committee members, what's on your mind?
And maybe I'll go to the summary sheet of that while I'm at it, just to kind of bring up the breakdown of that. So this is our funding allocation, and it's the general fund portion that got us toward the limit. The water and sanitary utility portions are have excess funding capacity, but the general fund does not.
So I would move that we make our recommendation of Finance and City Council to award the base bid of $2,140,551 rather, and 37 cents to Northwestern Stone LLC.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion with respect to the motion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that will be our recommendation to the Finance Committee and the Common Council.
So next up is our resolution then, and this is regarding the assessments themselves. So this would be the final assessment resolution that actually fixes the maximum amounts that would become due, as Rich had mentioned. These are based on the Northwestern Stone bid prices. So all of the Schedule C, let me just click down to that for a sec. So in a general sense, this right-hand column that's labeled total, maybe I can just zoom in on some representative ones up here, would be fixed as maximum reimbursements. So if we were wrong about measuring something and or the cost of it, that's on the city, not on the homeowner. It can be less than that, but not more. And both Terry Meyerhofer, who produced this schedule for us, and Rich Weihert, who checked it over, are available if there are any questions on specific line items. But other than that, we typically talk with residents about that.
Sean, does this not include then the alternate?
It does in the schedule, and until the council concurs, we just separated that out. So it's this sort of subgrouping of Schedule C. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, would that have to be rebid though? You know, if the council approves our recommendation, the finance committee, would this eventually have to be rebid when this is implemented? And I think we were looking at 2024.
Oh, yes, we wouldn't be building it now. We wouldn't be assessing anything for it now. So if the council confirms the committee recommendation to award just the base bid without the alternate, all these numbers in effect become zero. We're not going to build anything. We're not going to bill anything. And that decision gets kicked down the road to the Columbus Drive project, which this would be appended to. And we'll go through the process again. The assessment methodology may change in 3 or 4 years. That I can't say, but we use the current assessment at the time of beginning the process.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Any further discussion?
This is Robert. Just maybe a quick question as to why there is one address that has a driveway apron that's like 3 or 4 times, well, I guess 3 times more than most. Does anyone want to?
Do you know which driveway?
I can tell you. It's on the very, I think it's the second page. Is the one I'm looking at. That is, hang on, I have to cross over.
That's about 300 square feet.
Yeah, so I mean, what, yeah, I mean, obviously a lot more. Why is that apron so large? Is it like a?
It's a commercial facility.
It's a what facility?
Commercial.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You can see.
Okay, yes, I didn't understand everything I was seeing there. So okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
But we'll double check that too, just in case there's a typo. But I know Terry already did and Rich already did. It's a good question. When something's out of normal range, that's always a good question.
Yes, thank you. I feel like my question has been answered, so thank you.
Was that 201? This is Terry Meyerhofer. Was that 2019 Mayflower?
I believe
2019, yes.
Yeah. So that is commercial, and there are actually 2 driveway entrances, 2 driveway aprons on that parcel.
That makes a lot of sense. Then I don't need to check it at all. Done.
Okay. Thank you to all for answering my question.
All right, so we are on the assessment resolution. We do not have a motion under discussion at this point.
This is Carl. I make a motion that we recommend approval of the assessments.
All right, there's a motion made. Is there a second to that motion?
And I'll recommend that we include then the phrase that it be modified to remove costs associated with the bid alternate if not awarded by the council.
Right.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And I'll second the motion since nobody has. So I got it. Done.
Right, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion with respect to the motion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that will be our recommendation to the Finance Committee and the Common Council. Last item on the agenda.
Right, so we got our engineering service amendment, and Terry's here with any specific questions. There's a small piece in there, as we had talked about a few weeks ago, to revise the design of Mayflower north of Maywood to create bid alternate group A and to redo the street and sidewalk alignments, essentially with a focus on saving trees. So that work was done. And then the bigger part of the work is to do the construction phase services. So largely construction observation, but also administration and survey.
So Sean, is this an on-call service or do they come out periodically?
It's largely full-time underground and then part-time for work that's above ground that can be checked sort of spot check or anytime checked.
So the underground comes out of the utility budget then?
We typically bring that all out of general fund.
Okay.
I know Terry's going to track it separately for us just in case something squirrely comes up because we're kind of thin on the general fund. But historically, we've taken that out all out of general.
Okay.
And Sean, this work that they did to analyze, and to protect existing trees.
Mm-hmm.
Just to clarify that again, that project, so north of Maywood Avenue and Mayflower, trees were not going to be removed on that portion, correct?
Yeah, and I think that was part of the confusion that we heard from some folks tonight is that the city forester said we're going to have to take trees down. I think that might be a matter of timing because at one point the sidewalk did conflict with a couple of trees. After this redesign, when the forester went back out with Terry, the forester's opinion was that he would have to clearance prune one tree, but wouldn't have to remove any trees. And I think that was the difference.
That would be, is there a way to kind of make sure that that gets in their meeting notes to clarify for everyone to make sure that that's clear? I think that was upsetting people.
The harder part, and I know I've written that email to several people, but the harder part is that that's not on our agenda tonight. I know we spent some time talking about sidewalks and design, but our agenda tonight really dealt with assessments.
I agree with that, Sean.
Gotcha.
It's almost certainly going to come up in the next design that we can at least hit the ground running with that to try to iron out that misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm. So okay. Is there a breakout, Sean, of how much it did cost to redesign that part of Middleton?
It looks like, Don, it's the last page. It looks like it was about $8,400.
Yeah, it was $8,419.13. So we kept track of it separately and provided the hour breakdown.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because if we change it, it'll be at least that much again.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think they had the design done for the other.
Mentally, but I'll bet those files are gone.
The good news is now we have a springboard for starting next time.
Yeah.
To not try to use all of the right of way, we'll try to use the footprint of the existing road.
Carl, you've been there.
So this is Robert. I would make a motion to recommend amendment number 1 to engineering services agreement with MSA to finance and common council.
We have a motion. Is there a second to Robert's motion?
This is
I can second it. Susan, you spoke first. Yeah. I yield.
It was quite a foot race though.
Right. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion with respect to this issue?
I have a slightly tangential one in terms of going forward because this is going to keep coming up. Is there some way that Public Works can let homeowners know in a situation similar to this? I'm assuming there's a certain amount of that front yard that's actually city right of way and doesn't actually belong to the homeowner.
Right.
And many of them I know have planted in that area to let them know that this is part of the issue.
I think that's fair. There's always that confusion. And I like it when people decorate up that area with plantings and whatnot. Not so much trees, that's always a little bit sketchy, but flowers, up to the
Yeah.
sidewalk or curb line. I don't mind that.
No, I agree with you. And actually I have some flowers planted, daylilies in the city terrace, but I also know it's city property.
Yeah.
And I could be asked to remove them, or if they're damaged or whatever.
Right.
It's my problem and not the city's.
Or the utility company. I mean,
Or the
TDS
utility
or anybody can come through there without telling anybody. They can just do it. And
So I think it's just information we need to get out to our citizens.
I think that's a good point.
Okay. All right, any further discussion with respect to this motion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that will be our recommendation to the Finance Committee and the Council.
All right. That was the last thing on our agenda.
Before we adjourn, I don't know if people are still tuned in from the public. I can't see any of that on my screen.
We do
But if
have
there
quite a
are people
few.
from the public, I
There
just
are.
wanted to thank everybody for their input tonight. We appreciate your taking the time to come to address the committee. And we'll proceed with this project as we have recommended to the Finance Committee and the Council. I think we're ready to adjourn if anybody wishes to.
This is Robert. I would make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
This is
Dan.
Carrie. I'll second.
You keep getting
Right.
close though, Dan.
I do. I'm just a little behind.
We have a
I think
motion-
I got one early, so I'm good.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion with respect to the motion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we stand adjourned. Thank you all
Thank you.
Nice.
this evening.
Thanks.
And we'll see you again in a couple of weeks, I suspect.